beyond language instruction, supporting EAL newcomer mental health within a community practice is that as an EAL teacher, I wasn't always an EAL teacher. I was an English language arts teacher for 15 years and a visual arts teacher. And then I had a wonderful mentor who worked at our division office, who worked with, she had an EAL kind of cross-divisional job, and that was cut. And so it came to just our high school. And she mentored me and said, just take one EAL class, just one little small, you know, a 20 level, like B20 L, if you guys know the EAL high school courses, you'll be fine. I'm like, I don't know how to teach a language. I know how to teach poetry and, you know, Shakespeare, but what's the difference between and the, right? Like that sort of thing, the linguistic side of it, right? I had no background in that. So with that said, 15 years in, I was like, okay, I want to do this. I love this. And so I started taking the PCAL program online and did it over actually a period of about 4 years. I took my time and I took one class at a time per semester of teaching. And I was able to utilize that in my classroom every day. Is anyone looking at getting into the PCAL program or want, because biggest sales pitch ever, like I wish I could be upstairs telling all the rest of the people there, like it transformed my career. I really, really mean it. And it gave me the confidence to do what I do and have the expertise in my class, like in my school with my staff. And my student services team is kind of what we use the term when we talk about the whole community of our school. Yeah, I'm at a school, we just got grade 9s in. Wow, they're a new beast. But yeah, we're now at 1,300 students. We are a massive school. If you're from city schools too, you probably have those issues as well. Our population is about 31,000 in our city. We're an interesting school in that we're in Alberta located, but we're on the Saskatchewan curriculum, and that we kind of have this strange cross-provincial, like lots of different, like certain services are on one and certain services on the other, but we're all just one. There's no, you don't really notice it in our kids or anything like that. But populations change, right? So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we were going to have, you know, influxes of millions of newcomers, right? And then just recently this year, the numbers, you know, we're told they're going to go down, that sort of thing. So even in our positions in our schools, right, they cut them. And you never know how many newcomers you're going to get year to year. I don't always know what my FTE is going to be the next year based on the numbers. And they don't always show up in June. They don't always show up in September. They come at any time of the year. Often October and April is when I welcome students, because it depends on, you know, travel, and whenever their, you know, PR goes through is when they come to Canada, for example, or their work permits. Okay. So, but what I found was it's not just about teaching language. I made my school add to my title. I made the title of Newcomer Adjustment, because I have students, it's not just learning the language. There is so much more to coming to a country, to a new school, everything is different for students, like everything. I can't imagine. And is anyone here like an immigrant or no? Yes. How old were you when you came? 15. So you are exactly the kids that I work with, right? And so you know what it's like to go from being in a high school with friends you had, and then it's like, we're leaving to Canada and you have to pick up your whole life income, right? And there's a lot of exciting parts, but there's a lot of also stressful parts, right? So this presentation really is about you. Yeah? Okay, what's your name? Amy, nice to meet you. I'm Victoria. Okay, now let's see. Even this presentation will be so good, you'll stay for the whole time anyway. Okay, so here's my presentation goals. Now, I'm not big on reading off of the slides, right? When I did this as my university presentation, I had these technical notes and I didn't even bring them. So we're just going to be more informal here. But the first thing is we want to talk about what a community of practice is. And we know in the education sector, we love acronyms and we love titles of things, right? And this is a technical term, but essentially it is, you have a team of people, a team of specialists in your school who all have one central goal, right, to help out students. And in this case, we have a community of practice towards EAL students. Now, I'm part of that community, where I'm also part of a community that helps out my other, you know, my students, my F5 functionally integrated students that might be in my classroom as well. And I'm part of that community of practice. So everybody in your building should be part of this. But how do you become your expert in your area to share it with everybody, right? And everybody kind of has to be on board, because that word lonely island, we don't want that when we're specialists in schools, right? We want to be able to share. sorry, my next thing I'm going to talk about. This is a big one, is building understanding of the unique qualities of newcomers. When I first started, I grew up in Canada. My best friend growing up, they were next door neighbors. They're from Pakistan, and they were born in Canada, but their parents immigrated. And that was kind of my introduction to, the newcomer experience. But I'm just a kid, right, who would go, and hang out with my friend next door. But it's so different. There's so many layers, Amy, right? There's so many layers that I had no idea about, and it probably took me 3-4 years to really be able to truly understand my students, because I didn't go through what they went through, okay? But the more I work with kids who've been through that process of adjusting and coming to a new country, the more I can talk to them, speak to them, say, are you going through this right now? And they're like, yeah, right? So you're not the first, right? It's gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this, okay? So then we're going to talk about the unique qualities they have when they come. What are their common challenges? And in this case, we're looking at their mental health challenges, their academic challenges, and how that all comes together, okay? The stress that they feel, the culture shock that they feel. And then we look at best practices to work as a student team at the student services level. That's what we refer to ours as, particularly looking at SPOs, or what's the word for that? Your outside organizations. I know, yeah, settlement agencies, all kinds, but service provider organizations. We love acronyms, but reaching out into the community. So in our case, we got really involved in Swiss, Swiss is embedded in city schools, right? I remember going to a conference 5 years ago and saying, what's Swiss? And they're like, we have 25 Swiss workers in our division. We had 0, right? And so through the PCAL program, yeah, you don't have, I know, exactly, right? We're down to 1. We have 1 that works in 2 school divisions, but we'll talk about that more later too. But I could talk freely about this. I love it. And you're from Saskatoon? Yeah. Oh, I know you. You taught me, Shauna. I love you. This is good, right? This is A+ here. Okay. So then, yeah, let's move on. So this is my high school, Lloydminster Comprehensive High School. You see it's a 1960s building, but we put a nice flashy front on the front. But yeah, it's great. So a community of practice, right? And I don't really want to be the reader off the slides, but you're skilled practitioners and you work together collectively with a shared goal, okay? This isn't my caseload, that's not my student, right? You have to make people feel, on your team, you got to make them feel like they have the knowledge of how to work with a student, right? Because often it's like, your EAL, here's your EAL kid, right? Your FI, here's your FI kid. Your mainstream, you work with those kids, right? And so the more you can educate your staff, and actually through the PCAL program, this presentation, or an adaptation of it, I was able to give to my staff, because the goal was to teach my staff about how to work with EAL learners, okay? So we all have a goal, a shared responsibility to our learners, obviously. So our community, and all schools should look like this, and we know they don't always get to look like this, right? We have an English as an additional language specialist, right? We have 1 specialist in our school division, me, but I'm only at the high school level. I'm not allowed to go and do any work or any mentorship with the elementary or middle schools. They are all the ESTs, educational support teachers, work with them, right? And whether or not they have additional training is up to them and their professional development, right? Or whether the school division pushes that. And it's numbers based, right? So some years you have more need and some years you don't. So another one is your guidance counselors, mental health counselors, and then of course Swiss workers, which are amazing once we've gotten Swiss in our community, it was amazing. Our school is very blessed. We have 3 on-staff mental health counselors, full-time mental health counselors for a school of 1,300 kids. When I was in high school, that didn't exist. So you have a student that's in crisis, they can see, a trained mental health counselor, okay? Not just a guidance counselor, but in the areas of mental health that they can go, and they have, each counselor has over 100 kids on their caseload. We have an area in our school. It's like going to see your therapist, essentially, kind of, at the school level. They're not psychologists, right? They're not social workers, but they do have training to work with kids, okay? Then we have our student services, or educational support teachers, and kind of I'm under that umbrella. I'm put into that, but we also have them at each grade level. And then school administration, which sometimes they tell you, here, go do your thing, right? But it's really important to educate your school administration about what you do and get them to advocate for you. And if you do a really good job, they'll keep your program, or so I say, because they can't get rid of me. If they don't have me, I don't know what they do. Like, make yourself, how so I say, like, make yourself so necessary for your school. So in your, like, we don't have time to, like, interactively do this right now, but thinking about what's your capacity to work with at-risk students. Prior to even being an EAL teacher, myself, like, I have anxiety issues. I've been through the mental health system, right? Let's just all share in therapy right now, right? I've adult ADHD. I don't know if you notice, it's why I fidget and can't sit still, those sort of things. But that gives me insight into kids because I see them. I'm like, oh, okay, I know what that kid's going through because I've been through that too, regardless of whether you are an English language learner or regular. Well, let's not use the regular. I'm going to use the term mainstream, I guess, mainstream student. So what's your capacity? And I think we're not all mental health counselors though, right? And so that is part of my skill set and I utilize that, okay? But all of you have different skill sets, but also where do you have deficits and what do you need to know more about? So basically the goal of a school, of my goal for, I don't use the technical term always community of practice, but we're a team, right? My student services team is kind of how we would describe it. But basically is the goal is adjustment, making our kids feel like they belong. And we'll talk about, culture shock and different models and making those feelings of feeling safe, secure, and happy, that comes first. We will teach you English later, but you need to feel comfortable and safe in this building every day, and you got to want to come and have a smile or just, have some sense of, feeling like you're not scared all the time. That comes first, and that's what I tell parents. That's number one. Your safety, your feeling of being comfortable and your happiness is more important to me right now than whether or not you can write this history test, right? All right, so, the clicks. Oh, this is Ivan and his mother. So I did include just some photos of students that I've taught. Ivan graduated a few years ago. I still see him when I go to Canadian Tire because it's not that big of a city, right? But when I first started, I didn't really know about the newcomer experience, right? And it's hard because, like, I'll have parents ask me what country I'm from because I know so much about them and their foods and their countries and little bits of their language. And they're like, oh, you're not Canadian. I'm like, I am. They're like, but because I worked really hard to understand other cultures. And I want to, actually. It's not working hard. I enjoy doing it. So instead of giving you handouts, you guys can scan this and test it out. You could scan these and then you can, with your phone, and it will come to a PDF, like a document that is just an online link. And what it is, because I'm not going to talk about all these in great depth. Some of you might know there's 4 slides that go with this, and I'll briefly touch over them. Yep. Oh, no, the link didn't work. Oh, yeah. Let's just request access and I'll make sure you all get in. Yeah. Can you do that? And then I just change the access, right? Gosh, I had this. You know what? I think the other 2 links might work though, because I made it public. This one I added in this morning. I was trying to be all high tech and such. Yeah, just hit request access and I'll give it to you later. So basically understanding that we use the term newcomers, right? And it's kind of to me, it's using soft language. It's a wonderful welcoming word to use when I talk about my new students. So, but I learned this over many years, the different statuses that your newcomer has, and actually that the different statuses they have can affect them differently while they're in school. So we have permanent residency, and when our kids come with permanent residency, or if they're working towards it and they come and tell us at school, I got my PR misso, like, it's exciting. We're really excited when that happens. Temporary foreign workers, I have slides, we'll talk about them a little bit more, but that one has a bit of stress involved with it when your parents are here on that type of permit. We have international students, where those are tuition paying students, they're non-residents. We have refugees, and in my community, we don't have a large refugee community, but I know that in the larger city centers, you definitely would. And then the QIT program, which is now actually being phased out, and that was for Ukrainians coming to Canada. So I'm not gonna read all these in great detail. I'm just gonna so this is what, when you request access, this is what you would get access to, okay? But a permanent resident, usually my students come feeling happy. they've planned as a family to come, they know. But sometimes you're 15 years old and your mom says, IRCC, we're ready to go. It's mid-semester at your home school and you're coming to Canada now. Okay, and it maybe wasn't what they wanted as a kid, and maybe it was what their parents wanted. That happens. This one is you have a bit more stability, right? Because you're essentially a Canadian citizen and you just can't vote, right? You can leave the country, you can come back, right? You're not stressed all the time about your status. A lot will come after years of the process of trying to come in, so they're prepared and they know what they want to do. And they've left things behind and kind of maybe they've moved from other countries and they've let it go, or sold their houses and those sort of things, or they maintain their contact. They're often excited to start a new chapter in Canada. That's kind of what I get when I get kids with PR. The next is temporary foreign work permits, which most are working towards permanent residency, most. And currently my influx of students is mostly this in my community. And right now there's a lot of stress actually with my families because of the changes with IRCC and that they're limiting these work permits. So I have students who don't know what their world is going to look like next year. I have students who are going to university next year who, I've got one girl who isn't sure if she's going to be labeled an international student and paying $40,000 or $30,000 or what, like exorbitant cost, or am I going to have to go home? But home was here. I've been here for 2-3 years, so it's stressful for them and for their families, just always waiting for that. It's in process. I hear that a lot from parents and families. We're waiting, it's in process. Luckily in our school, as long as something is in process, we can legally keep them in our building until it's denied, which is, we've never seen a denial, but as long as we have that documentation that it is going through the system, we could keep our students in our school. Now at the university level, it's not the same. And so I've got grade 12s heading off and they're really stressed out right now. Also, one is that international students. This is another one. It's not as common, but I have students who are here. A girl, she was 15 years old. She came 15 by herself from China and lived with an aunt who she didn't know, and decided, her mom said, you're coming to Canada to go to school because that's what the choice is for you. And so the pressure that this young girl has and the language, when I have students specifically from China, I'll use that as an example. There's a big, like if I have a student, let's say from the Spanish-speaking student, it's a little bit easier when you're talking about like connecting the languages, and also just connecting culture and feeling like I belong here. So this one there's a lot of isolation, loneliness, and like one girl from Vietnam last semester, and she's doing great now, but she's in 2 weeks and she's like, what have I done? Well, I chose this with my family. What have I done? Do I go back home? And if I'm not doing well in school, this costs my parents money, right? So there's this pressure on our international students. And a lot of times, teachers, nobody has any idea that it's a tuition-paying student. So when we look at students with refugee status, we have had some in the past, and one of the key things, depending, is that, they're coming possibly from stress and trauma, right? War-torn countries. I had one girl who came from Sudan and she had a grade 5 education and couldn't speak English, didn't know the alphabet. And we were able to get her, and it took her 4 years, but we were able to get her through modified programming. She was able to graduate high school. And when you asked her, she didn't even really understand that she was in a refugee camp. She was just living in this massive 200,000, Shugrab, I think was the community in Sudan at that time. And it didn't dawn on her that she was a refugee. She didn't identify like that. She didn't actually come with any sadness or it was just hope. When she told me they walked for 2 days on foot with her mom and her baby, to get to this place, day and night, and just spoke about it casually, right, with me. And I was like, wow, I had no idea that you've been through this. So they have stories, and often I think, with refugee students too, and even looking at our QIT students, it's a sensitivity. When do I start talking to them about their home? When do they want to tell me about home? Because I'm not going to pester them, right? My boy from Eastern Ukraine, whose community is completely gone, right? We didn't talk about it at all. until he felt comfortable bringing it up with me. And he was like, it's okay, Miss O, I've been doing this since 2014, right? This isn't like it happened yesterday, you know, and he was able to tell me about that. But it wasn't something that we brought up and wanted to, like, I don't pressure kids like that. If they want to tell me their stories, I will let them do that naturally, especially with students who are coming from traumatic experiences. You know, I have another student who, a family that was in Thailand. They are Ahmadiyya Muslims from Pakistan, and they spent 6 years, I believe, in Thailand in one building, and they couldn't leave the building. It was like a kind of a compound because they were persecuted in their home country, and they had refugee status under the UN, but the country didn't recognize and allow, like the father couldn't go to work. And only after two and a half years did I learn that this family of these wonderful kids, their father had been in a detention center for 2 years, like in a tiny little detention center room. And I didn't know, you know, and it only came out later when he was going through some stressful times and trying to take care of his family, and all this just came out, right? But I would never know, and I don't expect to know that either unless they want to share. So with the QIT program right now, as well, with my, how many of you do any of you have Ukrainian students in your schools, right? I've had a couple girls, they essentially had an identity crisis, an absolute, like, and access mental health supports, but I don't want to be here. Not because I hate it here, but this isn't what my life was supposed to be. This isn't what I thought. This isn't what I imagined. I want to go back home. My friends are graduating. I want to be there, right? This was a girl whose community was not in the East, was not under direct, you know, direct conflict, but their family made the decision to come to Canada, and she was angry and had a lot of anger. And culturally, I find that my Ukrainian students, there's a lot of culture shock, a lot of differences between wanting to, you know, we're a very friendly, happy kind of place. And there was a lot of, do I want to give up who I am and my culture and my identity and just like give it up and become this Canadian, right? And I don't know how else to kind of say that, but I've had students who really struggle, right? And they want to make friends, but they're shy, and then there's the language barrier as well. But the why am I here? This isn't what I thought my life was going to be. That's a big one when you're talking about students who had to leave where it was not their vision. So I won't go, you know, the iceberg model, right? So if you've done PCAL, you've program 2, you know, the flower model of culture by Helmer and Eddy. I really like this one better than the iceberg model when you're talking about knowing your students. And often this is for the classic high school mainstream teacher, right? Every kid is a number, and you're going to get a grade and hand it in and be here on time, right? Now I'm generalizing as well, but we have the outside, right? I don't know why I need to come up close and touch it, but we have the outside things that we can visibly see, right? Like dress or ethnicity, right? Or I can hear an accent when that student talks, right? But there's so much deeper, right? And there's so many layers that we need to know and understand and respect, and you can't know it all. The only way you learn about culture, right, and other people is by knowing other people of other cultures. And that's a huge thing, right? And you have to want to, right? You have to want to go out. So when I go to Navratri, I pronounced it wrong. You know, my kids will say, "Come to this, you know, Gujarati festival." So like it's like Indian dance. Come to this, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm nervous." And I'm in a room of 300 people, and I'm the only white person, and I don't feel uncomfortable saying that. We laugh about it, like when I'm there with them, and they're like, "Oh my God, thank you for coming." The more you can integrate yourself with other cultures, where you're the one who feels like you're the other, I think that's really important, right? And it helps you grow. And this idea of cultural competency, I have another infographic that hopefully the link works, but there's more to it. And I am gonna read it a little bit, but basically you make a lifelong process to want to know more about other people and make yourself want to know more. And it goes beyond tolerance. The word tolerance isn't a positive word. I don't see that as a positive word. That just means like, oh, you're okay over there, you be you and I'll be me, right? We want acceptance and listening, right? We want to understand and know each other by trying things. So one of the biggest things at my school, and I didn't have a picture of this, is food. We have cultural potlucks all the time. So we celebrate Diwali, we have a Diwali festival. Then we have at Christmas, we have a Christmas festival. Then we have Chinese New Year. And then at the end of Ramadan, we celebrate Eid. So, and it's all for anybody who wants to come, but each one has a different theme. And it's not like, oh, it's culture week, right? Like that. But what we want to do is just at any time, kids can join in. One was we do Chinese hot pot, even though it's not technically, they don't normally eat that at Chinese New Year. So like even that is knowing that. My sister-in-law is from Harbin, China, so she lets me know, and she gave me tips on good hot pot. Anybody ever had a real hot pot? So good. Yeah, the kids love it. They sign up. We have like the literal steaming bowls, and you know they're eating it. And that's not just, those aren't newcomer kids trying that out. That's like all kids from our school. So those are neat experiences. Maybe I just want to have a restaurant, or I just really like food. But with that, with the knowledge of food, that's my number one way to get in with families. So when I meet a family, right, and they're from Philippines, yes, and I say, oh my God, I love pancit, and my favorite soup, right, is sinigang, right, best soup ever, right, and they're not called spring rolls, right, they're lumpia, right, and all of that, their families smile and they're warm, right, and they're like, oh my God, right, when I tell them how many different types of biryani I've tried, right, do you know how many types of biryani I get given to me? Like that's the other bonus or perk, is the food that comes to me from parents is amazing, right? So, but that is my way in with a lot of my families, is this culture of food. And then, you know, even learning just simple pronunciations of foods and things, right? And just taking that time, and their faces warm up when they speak with you with parents. And I think it's just like those little things, and that's part of, I don't know everything. I don't know all the world's languages and all the world's cultures, but each time I add a new one in, I just add it to my bank of sharing, I guess. So a lot of our early challenges with newcomer youth, okay, and I'm gonna take probably till, can we go till like 11:55? Yeah, you guys are good with that? Yeah. I could just tell jokes. A lot of it is this inability to be themselves. So they have, you know, and I'm speaking from a secondary perspective of teenagers. That's where my frame of reference is coming from. But I have students who are overwhelmed, and they can't express who they are or tell me who they really are because they can't do it in, you know, the language that's being used in the classroom. So often when I first meet students, I will have them write me something in their home language, and then I just hit Google Translate. And I'm like, wow, this student has such a depth of thought and feeling, right? So we actually utilize as supports. Google Translate's huge in our school. We use it for any subject that's not English. So I have students that are fully embedded in math, science, history classes, and they utilize translated documents as well as English documents, and they're able to survive high school, which we were never able to do before. And Google Translate's my favorite because it's the easiest. We're a Google school in our division. But there's so many different stresses that students have, and from financial stress, right? And yeah, I'll go through more. I don't want to repeat myself too much. So instead, actually, let's hear it from our students. So I'm not a filmmaker, okay? This was the one and only time I made movies. And I spent hours making this, so please be patient with me. So I interviewed my students. This was pre-COVID, and I interviewed them. I put a thing on the table, and I asked them to chat. And I asked them questions. So I had a group of girls, we chatted, and then afterwards I talked with a group of boys. And then I sat and I edited their conversations here. So the first video is what factors contributed to a student's positive immigration experiences. You're gonna hear their voices, you're not gonna see them. What challenges did some of them face? What supports did they say they got? And what role did school play in helping them during early adjustment? So this is like before they're even, like just as they're coming to the country, starting off.
When I first came to Canada, I wanted to know how like snow felt.
When I first came in Canada, I was excited when it's so cold and seeing the snow fall.
I was excited about the snow in winter, and then how the school works in Canada.
I was looking forward to speaking English, of course, but like, cause I knew a little and I thought I was like ready, but I wasn't.
When I came here, my grandmother was here, which I grew up with her, so I wasn't really that homesick. But then when my grandmother went home, I was really like homesick. I wanted to go home, but now I'm okay with it because I found some friends.
When I came to Canada, at the border, the Canadian border, I get just at the Indian border, I just get separated with my brother due to some immigration and corona issues. So I have a great challenge to meet my mother and my sister after so long time, and I didn't have much friends here, and yeah, only my family. So it's a kind of big struggle when I came in.
I didn't have that many challenges. We had like family and friends to like support. I had cousins and they would ask questions for me and talk for me. If I didn't have my cousins there, I wouldn't know how to speak English. Like we basically lived with them. We lived with them for a long time until we knew how to how Canada works.
When my family immigrant here in Canada, my mom, she married Canadian, and that's why we get more support to get in here easily.
When we first came to Canada, it was really smooth. I already had some of my families here, so yeah, they helped us when we first came here. And my mom has been working here for almost 5 years.
All those friendships I built up and like having to start over. I used to always go out every day to my grandma's house, my aunt's house, and like since I moved, I was just home all the time. It was a big change.
I feel like I did get I would say sad but emotional mostly, because I would like change my emotions really quick. Like I would be mad or I would cry. My parents thought I was depressed. I feel like it did affect like who I was, since I wasn't really like that, but it helped me build up into who I am now. Like I can show my emotions and how I feel, and I'm not afraid of it.
When I just came to the school, I have some language issues, so that affected me and I had cried. I have some family problems that are affecting me. So my immigration experience, it was really tough. At the airport I cry a lot because they're just separating my brother and me. So it's a very hard moment to go through, and yeah, even I didn't wanted him to be there alone. So yeah, I didn't want it. I've not even thought of that experience that we had, and that was like worse in my life.
I have experienced like anxiety when I first came here, because I was so worried. Like I was overthinking, like what if this will happen to me, what if I go to school and this will happen. It's like it made me like introvert. I'm scared to like come out of my shell and show where I came from. I was like, what if I say that I came from this village and they will say, oh, you're different from us. When I went to school, I communicate with other students. I feel like I'm welcome with them. I wasn't that different. Just after a month, I overcome that anxiety because I already feel comfortable. I already feel that I am welcome here in Canada.
So those are LCHS students. I'm going to close that now. If I close this, yes. So that was like heartbreaking and also uplifting at the same time. That one young woman who was separated from her brother, there's more to the story, but it was heartbreaking. Her brother was left, they're at the airport. The brother's papers didn't go through. The father and the sisters did. They were remarrying someone in Canada that they hadn't met in 4 years prior, and it was just traumatic all across the board for this young woman. And it took years, and we worked with her and her family, and she's off at university now, and she wants to study medicine, and she's so resilient. And I think the big thing is I tell my students, these kids, you're world adventurers, right? You are stronger than 90% of the kids in here that have never had to go through what you've had to go through. After you graduate high school, you can conquer anything. You can go anywhere. You've gotten on a plane and moved to another country and started over. So, like I got goosebumps. It's just it's powerful when you really sit down and talk to these kids. But what we do notice about that is, did they talk about school yet, or teachers, or anybody? Who really helped them out at that time when they first came? tell me, you tell me. Family, right? People they knew, support systems that were already there. And not everybody has those support systems. When we think about that one girl who was separated, the father and her didn't. They were in low income housing, right? We had to get them help. We luckily had just started our Swiss program, and that was a big factor in helping this young woman out. But the biggest support, the number one support was family. And yeah, we're not IRCC, you know, although I have sat on hold with them trying to help a family out, but now I have Swiss. But there's excitement, but then also there's fear. And even those that go through the fun part, they still feel fear at the same time. So that's the first step. There's 3 videos in total, and you're going to kind of see the progression of what they go through. So then these are some of the, we have another video, what they faced once they got into the school, the new school. Okay.
Where that I was so social in Mexico, and when I came here I was scared that I was not going to be like social anymore, like just not me anymore. But once I moved and I got to like have friends real quickly, it was like just a relief, I guess.
Change everything because you speak English, you can speak Tagalog because they're not understanding what you're saying, and also the people around you, you don't know them, how to get friends easily, but it's hard, not like in Philippines.
It's my first time sitting on a classroom. I was like, wait, I don't really understand what she was saying. So that was like my really challenge that I faced during my first day of school.
That sometimes I want to talk with others, but I don't know how to begin this talking. In class, I just sit on there and I'm lonely and I cannot understand. I cannot enjoy the class. Most time I'm just study on my own and I feel that's bad.
I was scared I wouldn't like talk English. Like, how would I communicate? Communicating with my teachers, like the first day I couldn't just ask like, what am I supposed to do? Like my classes, what was I supposed to do? Where I was supposed to go? I was supposed to stay in the same room. I didn't know what to do. I was just there.
Sometimes in class, it's hard to communicate in teachers when you don't asking question.
Sometimes I had a hard time communicating with my teachers because I didn't know what to like ask them, and I don't know if they're gonna answer my question or not. But sometimes it's easy to communicate with them because I know what to ask.
One of my challenges inside of a classroom is like I'm nervous to like speak English. I'm nervous that what if I say a word and it was a wrong pronunciation. So I always just sit down there and like if they ask me a question, if they mention my name, that's the time when I answer. But then if I have like there are times that I don't understand like instruction, I don't ask the teacher because I was nervous.
When I first come, my English is like very bad. I cannot understand mostly people speak. And so in class or the break time, I'm not relaxed to talk with others. And the other people is like not very want to talk to me too because maybe they feel it's difficult to talking with me. And so I just sit on there lonely and watch on my phone. So this is make me very sad and I don't have friends.
I'm not afraid what to say things. Like I say like what's in my mind.
Like I have very that how will I speak English and how can I manage there, and the education system is totally different, so that how will I deal with my teachers and how I will make friends and all. I didn't understand some teachers speaking fluency. That was the major issue. Then just sitting in a room, but then after I got you, I didn't feel any problem anymore.
One of the things when you're working with students, and this is for the the mainstream classroom teacher, is not realizing how worried, like a lot of times when a kid is quiet, and just sitting nicely in class. We just don't have to deal with them, right? Like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but we don't know what's going on inside. And rather than me telling you all these things that kids go through, like I think it's far more powerful to hear it from them. There's one girl in there, Debbie, she was from China, and it wasn't that she thought kids didn't like her. She literally thought kids didn't know how to chat with her. Like maybe they don't know how to talk to me because I don't know English very well, right? She wasn't blaming other people. She was just feeling like, I don't know what to do. So a lot of my job too is being a bridge between kids and teachers and students, how to help them. Like I have kids like, how do I make friends? Like, how do I do that? And I can't walk them and be, but what I do is I create a community in my classroom. And so my room is this lunchroom. It's the EAL room. It's also just a regular teaching classroom. And anybody can come in there at any time. And it's full of kids. And more now, it's got mainstream kids, Canadian, when I say Canadian, I mean any kid at all, but not just newcomers. And they all kind of hang out together. And it's really neat because before it used to be just sort of an isolated, segregated, where the kids who don't speak English. And now it's just kind of a cool place to be, hang out, and make friends. And you'll find there's students that also want to learn about culture, like me, like the kind of kid that I was, and they want to seek that out too. So by creating those safe places. The key though is like, how do you tell teachers, right? So by showing my staff this, right, this video was very beneficial because my staff knew those voices. They were like, oh my gosh, I know who that kid is, right? But that student never expressed that to them, right? And it's teaching them not always just put your hand up because kids are nervous. They're not going to do that, right? But when is a good time to talk to your teacher? Often I'll be that person to be like, hey, let's go talk to Mr. Proctor. We'll use my physics teacher that kids are scared of. Let's go talk to him together. And, and then once they get the connection with the teacher, and then I leave. I say, okay, you've now met him. I'm going to go and you guys work it out together. And then that gives that kid that sense of independence. And that's the key, is that they call me mom. Like they literally give me birthday cakes that say mom and happy birthday 25 years. I'm not 25. But that feeling that I'm there for them. And so when I do meet their families, I jokingly say, like, I will be a mom to your kids and I will care for them. But I'm provided that ability in my school with my program, right? And I don't think we all feel like we don't have always the capacity to do that. I also don't have my own children, which is also, people with families and lives. It's hard to spread yourself like that. So this is part of like my passion, and that's just kind of like why I'm doing this, right? I feel like I'm doing a service to myself and to my community. Looks like they want to bring stuff in. Is this a lunchroom? I'm confused. All right. So in that video, just to summarize, right, one of the big things too is the new school system. That's huge. The biggest thing is educating parents, and Swiss helps us out with that too, but educating parents and the students about this is what it's like in school in Canada, because education systems around the world are vastly different. And kids might not know when to, like, basic things like, do I stand up to ask a question, right? Things like that. But also, how do I communicate with my teachers? What's the level of interaction? What am I supposed to do as students? How do I hand in homework? What kind of tests do I write? Is it rote memorization, or do they want me to think critically? Because I've never had to do that in my school system before. I'm used to doing this type of testing, right? So that is a huge thing in my job, where I'm trying to help students adjust to that school system. Yeah. Are we good for time still? Yeah, we're good? Okay. And then, yeah, the communication barriers with peers, I do want to celebrate this, that I have kids who will come and they're very nervous when they first come, right, Amy? You were nervous to make friends. That's like the number one, right? Number one thing, will I make friends? And within a day they do, because I create these teams of kids who have been through it. I'm going to shout out little Rudra. Well, he's not little, he's a big man with a beard now, but Rudra Kapadia, he's a grade 12. And when a newcomer comes, and I don't have to be the one to walk him through the school, show him his locker, all that. I'm like, Rudra, do you want to show, Mo dude how to do this? Can you get him all set up on the computers and everything? And he's like, yeah, come with me, buddy. Right? Because they know what it's like. And then they feel a sense of like they feel important because they're helping out other newcomers, right? And it's not that typical, the idea of there's a story we read where it's like, we read a reading with some of my kids years ago where the girl, she was a Japanese American, but born in the US, and the teacher automatically just put the new Japanese student beside her and was like, and the girl's like, I don't even speak Japanese, why would I do that, right? So that's not what I mean when I say that, when I link kids together. They might not even speak the same home language. It's the shared experience of knowing what it's like to be new. That's the key there, okay? So this, I'm not gonna read all of this, but this is the 4 stages of culture shock, and maybe you've seen culture shock models before. Pretty much every time I meet with a family, I draw this on a piece of paper, okay? I draw it and I write down, this is where you are right now. And I even tell the parents you're in the honeymoon phase. And then I always say my little joke, remember when you first got married, right? I'll say that to the parents and like, remember the first 6 months are great, you know, and they laugh with us. And that breaks the ice too, like just this little thing, right? And we talk about how it might be, this honeymoon phase might be 6 months. This might be 1 week, this might be 1 day. Some might arrive without even having that excitement about coming, okay? But then we get into school, suddenly hits us hard and it's stressful, especially at and secondary level is very stressful, I would say. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like if I'm, you know, a grade 2 kid, maybe my adjustment is a bit more easier with making friends and just integrating with the language. But when you suddenly are in classes where, you know, you're taking a regular math class and social studies and all of that, and you're just diving in, right? So then we have this adjustment, right? We feel stress, and we saw that in that video, right? And then what we want to do is, our goal is to help them out, right? This is that adjustment process where they finally feel like they belong, right? And the key isn't, you know, assimilation or anything like that, right? It's not. It's that we talk a lot as well in my classrooms about dual cultures and how you guys share, you have home cultures and your new Canadian identities, and it's important to embrace both. You know, I often will say, please, you do not need to change your accent. Your accent's beautiful. It's never going to go away anyway because you're over the age of 12 and technically it's very difficult to lose it, right? Enjoy it. It's beautiful, right? Sometimes I'll joke, I'll be like, the girls really like it, right? Your Spanish accent, right? It'll get you more girlfriends. But it's something to say, no, celebrate that. That's okay. And I'm like, we're in Canada. That's absolutely normal. Like just having those conversations and allowing them to be like, you can talk in your home language in the hallway. Don't worry about it. We talk about, do other people think I'm talking about them, right? You know, we have those conversations about that and understanding how to read a room and when to, you know, using your home language is important, but when you're in a shared group with people, what's your shared language that you want everybody to have? So just being respectful of everyone around you, okay? But what I do is when I draw this with my parents, that I meet them, I draw this and then I draw it like that and I pencil in there and I say, that's my job. My job is to make you not hit that bottom. My job is to make that smoother. And just like you're nodding your heads, that's what parents do. They're like, oh, okay, thank you, right? And that's when I say, you know, your adjustment is so important. And it gives these families a real sense of like, oh, it's gonna be okay. So a lot of this is kind of repeating itself because when I did this, I had to go into super depth when I was in university. But that's that idea, acultural stressors, right? The unfamiliar, confusing culture shock you go through leads to all of these mental health effects, right? So I have one boy right now, okay? He's from Cuba and he's angry a lot and sullen looking and doesn't smile much, right? And I've met with parents and the father is like English Canadian, and he understands, and his mom is back in Cuba, and he wanted to come to Canada, but he also didn't. And a huge part too is the weather and the differences in culture. My kids from the Philippines, my kids from any sort of equatorial countries, they're used to being out at night and walking around and being able to go places. And in Canada, you're isolated in your apartments and your homes, and it's just not the same. So they really feel that too when they first come. So again, I'm just repeating that it's not just about language proficiency. I know we learn how to teach English as an additional language, but in my opinion, this is more important. It's adjustment and helping these kids feel like kids. And I absolutely think that because once you have these kids feeling like they belong, you will see amazing development in their language. So again, I'm just reiterating the cultural norms and the differences in schools. That's important to be aware of and to let the kids know and to let the teacher know that this student has come, like, and I mean classroom teachers, like that's my job to bridge, letting them know, right, that they may not understand all of this and please be patient with the student. So best practices, this is our last part of the goal, okay? And I put it at LCHS. So as you view this video, reflect on how did students overcome their challenges at adjusting to school, and who were the key people? And it's not just me, okay? And when it talks about, it's going to talk about a teacher who knew about a student's culture, and it wasn't me, it was a regular mainstream teacher. And you'll see. And then let's notice if there's other supports that we're missing for these kids.
I guess my teacher helped me a lot. They speak with me with like slow, and then they ask me if like, did you understand this? And or my friend says, okay, I'll explain it to you. So I guess I already overcome the challenge in my life, and sometimes I also help other students to do it because I know the feeling.
Once I learned English, it was easier to like understand my teachers, but I always had that one friend. She was just always like, after the teacher would explain something, she would just like explain it slower to me or like translate it, and it was easier. So it was nice to know there was someone else there for me.
I have a teacher that helps me in school. If I'm struggling in some of my classes, he helps me go through my work and review with me.
Yeah, I had a person where she like helps me about outside of school and school and stuff. She still helps me. She helps like everyone that comes.
Teacher helped me to make friends. She introduced me to different people, and my friends are of different cultures.
I have a teacher that I always go to if I need help, and that's my EAL teacher. But also with my other classes, I also connect with my teacher and ask them about my assignments or any helps, like my English class, my history class.
Back in middle school, I used to have another teacher. She was an EAL teacher, and she would like, even though she wasn't really an EAL teacher, she would help me. And when I came to high school, I had another EAL teacher, and she helped me a lot too.
Now in high school, first is my English be better. I can talk with others more than middle school. In class, teacher will ask me some questions and make some group work, and I can enjoy it.
I solved my challenge when I got teacher helped me how to speak English and how to say correctly and to understand.
Swiss working is an important part after coming to Canada. The Swiss worker helped me a lot with all the problems I'm dealing with or my family is dealing with, and the Swiss worker even said that I can ask questions if I need.
During my middle school, I met the principal, and he told me that if I have a problem, if I have felt like bullied inside the school, I would go to him. So like I had like a communication with my principal, and that made me feel great because I feel like I'm comfortable inside that school.
In middle school, I met my principal when I moved here, and they would always check on me, and like all the staff and counselors would check on me. And in high school, I met my principal once, and he let me know that he would be there if I needed help with anything, just to ask questions. If I could give an advice to my teachers, I would like them to maybe build up that communication with me. Like if they asked about me and my culture, that would definitely make me feel better because they're interested.
I made a good connection with this teacher because she is very polite to me, and she was just saying me that if I have any problem with anything, I can ask her anytime. She even knows about my culture, so she talks about it, and it feels very good to listen about my culture from like my teachers.
If I can give an advice to a teacher, I would tell them to like be considerate with a new student in Canada. Like they would always ask their student if are they okay, what are their cultures, to make the student more comfortable and feel welcome here in Canada.
I went to his wedding. Sorry, I should be in the microphone there. I got to go to his wedding, and just so I live in a smaller community, so we were able to have those a little bit closer connections. But those are all positive experiences that those kids went through, and it wasn't just because, sorry, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, okay, just because of EAL teachers, right? It was all these other supports. So the one that I want to talk about that's so important in schools is Swiss, right? And that's what we've gotten into our school. We've had Swiss now for about 4 or 5 years, I think, and it has absolutely changed my role and allowed us to be way more involved with families. So we have one Swiss worker that works with 70 families, so that's a lot, and that's over 2 school divisions. But even now, so when we talk about community practice, to kind of wrap it up a little bit, my Swiss worker now has the confidence in my building, can email teachers to say, hey, can I pull your student for an appointment? We know the roles of Swiss workers, that they can't, go in and tutor kids and things. But also for example, one of our mental health counselors came to me and was like, can I reach out to you? Because we have it all on file. We know who works with who. And says, can I reach out to this family? Are they, do they qualify for Swiss? And I said, yeah. And rather than having to go between me and have me make the connection, though, that team is coming together, right? So that's that idea of that community practice where everybody feels like they know each other and they can connect with each other. So this is one. Let's see if it works. Let's just see. I'm not going to go through it, but this is a fun infographic that I made way back in the day. But all about how to know your learners and kind of all the different things that about cultural norms and things that values that are different place to place, right? Did it work? Yes, thank you. And it's a lot, like you can scroll through. It's kind of a fun one. And then this one, the building cultural competency also, there's actually 4 levels of how to build cultural competency from de Guzman et al. And it kind of broke it down in a nice infographic. And one of the key things, though, is listening and choosing to take time to listen and to remove your personal bias. So like I could click on it, but we only have a couple minutes. But for example, if you were to look at it, it goes, I can't scroll. Yeah. So it shows you all the different levels of it, for example, like that. Go back. And then, so moving forward, basically, everybody needs to work cooperatively, right? The more knowledge you have about educational histories, prior educational programming, socio-emotional needs of learners, right? That's part of my job. That's part of my Swiss workers' job, right? When we do, when kids register for school. And then using each skill set, because when I first started, I had to do it all, and I couldn't do it all. And I think you guys know how that feels. These are 2 books that I love. They're really thin. The 6 Principles of Exemplary Teaching of English Language Learners, that one focuses specifically on communities of practice. But the Look at Me When I Talk to You, oh, that book I have read so many times. It's highlighted. It changed a lot of the way I see, and that was through the PCAL program. The really taking the bias away and understanding that, hey, I don't know everything. So yeah, that's just our quick review, and I think we've got it. Yeah, did you enjoy that? Was that okay? Yeah, all right. Thanks, guys.